I think that Larry Letitia brought me into the story. I think stories choose you, and you don't choose the story. It was a very personal journey for me, and I really wanted to find out why Brandon killed Larry Letitia. I didn't understand it, and I wanted to be able to look at all the different ramifications of Brandon's life that led him to make that choice on February 12th.
So this was just the newspapers, like everybody else in America, you just kind of read about it and thought, damn, and just like, oh my God. And
well, at the time I was living in New York when it happened, and I didn't read about it until I was at my son's school, and it was in the Southern Poverty Law Center has a magazine that comes out quarterly, and that happened to be in the library at my son's school, and it said, hate crimes that have happened recently in California, and that this had happened in my state, which everyone thinks is this like very free love, open place. White supremacy, a hate crime, and I was shocked and didn't know really that much about it. I hadn't heard about it in New York when I was living there. I also had 2 small children and probably was chasing around little people a lot at that time. But I don't know, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. It just grabbed a hold of me, and I had to find out more. And I was also looking at, AFI has a program called Directing Workshop. And so I was looking at, I wanted this story to be the story that brought me into AFI's program. And so I wrote a short film script, based on the incident. But when I realized that this isn't an incident, this is a hate crime, and hate crimes happen, all the time, and we need to look at them as more of something that's affecting our society and not individualized incidents. It was much bigger. And so when I was sitting in on Brandon's hearings, and I realized, this is much bigger than just this one killing. This is something that I need to look further into, and so I decided to make a documentary.
And you've lived with this story for a long time. I mean, this had happened in 2008, and it's now 2014, and this story is finally being told. Was it difficult, A, to get the financing and to get this documentary on the road, which it probably was, but also the involvement of the people in the town? I mean, talk us a little bit through that, like who you approached first, and was it difficult, I imagine?
Well, I'll talk with the financing first. I mean, I would go into rooms and I would sit there. I've never made a film in my life. This is my first film. And I would, thank you. Thank you. And I would sit there and I would say, okay, so I want to make this film about this trans biracial child who's killed by a white supremacist. And they were like, oh, that's really never going to happen. Never going to happen. I mean, went to HBO, went to everything. Every person begged for money from every foundation. Anyone that you could possibly think of that gives money to documentary filmmakers, and just everyone said no, except for Buna Murray. And then Ford Foundation came in and gave me pretty much the other half. And then Sundance said yes, and HBO said yes to Rough Cut, and then it all just kind of worked out. So with the people that are in the film, it's a small town, even though there's 200,000 people, which isn't really that small. It's a small town mentality, so everybody knows each other. And when word got out that I was making a film, I mean, I had my daughter on my hip sometimes, so no one took me seriously. I think that's how I got in, with a stroller and some snacks and my camcorder, and they're like, this is going nowhere. I'll talk to you all day long. So I think that's what happened at first, honestly. The toddler is very kind of distracting. So I think that initially it was just I'm black, number one, a woman, number two, and all these things that sometimes work against us worked for me, because people didn't take me seriously because of it. I mean, I honestly really believe that, because I would go to like shoots, and people were like, and where's the director? Is there the director here? And I'd be based on how that person was acting, if they looked like they were happy to see the director or not, I'd be like, I don't know. The tall white woman next to me that has the camera, she looks very officious. Maybe we should talk to her. I think that race really played a piece of me being able to get some of the interviews that I got. So, and the kids, with no question about it. So they, me being a woman, me being black, most of the kids that I associated with, not the white supremacist side, obviously, but the kids in Oxnard that I spoke to out of the school, Latino, black, or white kids who really have only grown up with black or Latino people. So I think that brought an ease to it. I think that became very personal for them. I don't know what it was that drove them initially, besides Robin's kind of obsession with Brandon. I think that's really what drove the whole case, is that they both became very close with the family, and they don't think they're white supremacists. They just don't. I mean, she's a Jew. She's, wore the Star of David in court, talked about being a Jew. She doesn't think they're white supremacists. She doesn't think it's a hate crime. I don't know. I can't speak for Brandon, but I can say Kendra had a tremendous amount of pain and felt deep, deep remorse for what her son had done, without a doubt. It was genuine, like a mother's, that idea of, look what my son has done, and the pain and the suffering of knowing that you brought this child into the world and that you raised this child. That was felt, without a doubt. Our whole team cried the day that she told us that. We didn't put it in the film because it's not about her. So we didn't put it in. We really wanted to stay focused on the two boys, the two kids, I should say. I can give you my own personal idea of it. I mean, it's jaded, but it is. I mean, I sat through 9 weeks of a trial. I went every single day to that trial. And the straight white male privilege was just abundant. I mean, it won out. I don't know how else to put it. And since then, I don't know if you've heard about Trayvon Martin or Jordan Davis, but these cases, interesting, because some of the cases that we're looking at now in America, the perpetrator is another African-American male, but of a different generation. And I think that what's happening is the privilege aspect and the class aspect is something that gets ignored a lot in our country. It's brought up more here, but it really gets ignored in America. And I feel like when it comes to Brandon specifically, he might not have been in the same class, but it was one of those feelings, as you can tell when you see the jurors talking about it, was if he had had this situation, he could have been a contender. It's that feeling of, he could have been my son, he could have been my grandson. There, Letitia, I mean, the lack of empathy was appalling. This is a very HBO question that you're asking me right now, because my editor keeps saying, in 10 years that they're going to come and call you and they're going to ask you to, I'm just letting you know now. And I don't think I can do that. I honestly, I didn't do it for Brandon. I wanted to look, the reason why I did Brandon is just to see why he killed Larry Letitia. That was it. And I wanted it to be an even story. I didn't want judgment passed on a 14-year-old child. Otherwise, they could have told you he was a white supremacist from the beginning.